Why now is my technology is not, there it goes. Okay, here we go. I tell you, it's been a morning. We have had several things going on and our internet was down for a little bit. So I was wondering if this was even going to happen today. But again, my name is Liz Hanson. I'm a CASA volunteer coordinator with CASA of West Kentucky. And my role with the agency has changed quite a lot over the years. And so I just continue to love working with you all as a supervisor on cases, have done some of the training in the past, and I'm excited to be able to share some of my knowledge. I'm not an expert on this. Everything that I'm going to be sharing with you today has come from either other sources or from things that I have learned throughout my time here. So I hope that this is helpful to you today. And I kind of wanted to give you a roadmap of where we're going to be going today. I also want to tell you, if you have a question at any time, I have some specific time set aside for questions and comments. But if it's something that we're talking about right then and you have something you think would be helpful to share or a question that others may have, don't hesitate to raise your hand, to use the little raise hand icon. And I'm trusting that Stephanie or Jim will interrupt me and let me know that there's a question out there if I'm just charging on through. But do not hesitate to interrupt me. It will not hurt my feelings at all. So this is our roadmap for today. We're going to go through some brief program updates, mostly some of our coming soon events and trainings. We'll be going through the ABCs of courtroom etiquette. Again, there'll be a set aside time for questions and comments, but you can interrupt at any time. And then I'll be sharing some tips for speaking up in court and for testifying in court. Again, these are some things that I have found helpful when I've spoken up or have been asked to testify in a case. So some of you may have some insight to that as well. And I know a few of you have been asked to testify. And so I may ask for some of your comments as well. And then we'll do a quick wrap up with some questions and comments. So that's kind of where we're headed. If anybody wasn't expecting this was going to be where we're heading and you need to sign off, you may do so, but I hope you'll stick with us because I think there's going to be some good information for you out there. All right. So our first update, our kind of coming soon, if you have received this April edition of our e-news, a lot of these things will be repeats from what you saw in the e-news that was sent out this morning. But April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And so we kick off tomorrow with our Wear Blue Day. And I've got an email address here. I don't know if Stephanie or Jen, if you might be able to type Dave's email address into the chat bar. Dave Thompson is going to be putting together some of our online presence about Wear Blue Day. And so we would love for you to send pictures. And this document is something that Stephanie was going to upload for you. It's something that you can print in color on your printer. And if you would be so kind to do that, if you don't have to, but you can take a selfie of yourself wearing blue and send that to Dave at the email that I had just showed you. Or if it's easier for you to take the picture on your phone and just text it to your supervisor, we can make sure it gets to Dave. But we want to have a flood of blue pinwheels. If you already have a pinwheel, or I'll be telling you where you can pick one up. We want to just flood Facebook and our Facebook page, and also with the Prevent Child Abuse Kentucky page with our volunteers wearing blue. You can include family members or friends. Of course, if you're with friends who you don't live in the home with, if you're masked, wear your mask, wear your CASA mask, and go ahead and take that picture of you and your select group or just yourself and send that to us so that we can be sure to include that in this campaign for Wear Blue on Child Abuse Prevention Kickoff Day. Also, if you have a pinwheel, great, include that. If you don't have a pinwheel, we will have a pinwheel garden planted in front of our Child Watch office. So, or if you are driving by 1118 Jefferson Street and would like to stop by and pick a pinwheel from our pinwheel garden, we would love for you to do that. Today, we're also planting a pinwheel garden at the McCracken County Courthouse. And so after about 1:15 today, you'll be able to pick up a pinwheel from the McCracken County Courthouse. Jen, do you know, is the pinwheel planting at Ballard happening today?
Yes, we are going to be going to the courthouse at around 3.
Okay, so if there are those of you who live out in Ballard County, and it would be a bit of a drive for you to come into McCracken, you'll be able to, after this afternoon, to stop by and pick up a pinwheel for Ballard. And I'm hoping, Stephanie, that we're doing that at Livingston and Lyon as well.
We
perhaps?
are.
Okay,
We are.
wonderful.
We'll have more than enough at the office too. So if you need us to even bring one by you, just let us know.
Yeah, there's several opportunities for you to pick up a pinwheel, but I loved it because during this pandemic last year, I planted some pinwheels out in my front garden. And my husband and I took many walks throughout our neighborhood here. And I had several people ask me about the blue pinwheels because they hadn't seen children in and out of our home. And so I got the opportunity to share about Child Abuse Prevention Month and, more importantly, the work that we do ongoing. And so it's a wonderful way that you can help to share some of the work that you're doing for children in our communities. All right. Next up, coming soon, is the April virtual 5K Justice Run that's sponsored by the Student Justice Club, Alpha Epsilon Theta. This is a group out of the WKCTC, and I believe that Savannah is involved in that and may even be heading this up. We can also upload that document where you can register and get more information about it. And it's also on our Child Watch and CASA of West Kentucky Facebook page if you follow our Facebook page. But registration, the whole thing starts tomorrow. It's a virtual 5K again this year. The Justice Club has been so good to us. I know since I've been involved in 2014, they've been doing this every year for us, and all proceeds benefit Child Watch. So we'd be happy to get you a flyer and more information so that you can register. And the nice thing is you have the whole month to get this 5K done. You have from April 1st to April 30th. So we would love for you to participate in that. Savannah, is there anything that you'd like to share with the group about this?
The only thing that I would like to share is that Gary Reese, who is kind of head of the group, he asks that if you're going to do it, then the money be sent in by April 15th.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, so you'll get all the information that you need on the paperwork and the link to register. And so if you can decide if you're going to do this or not by April 15th, please feel free to share it. If you follow our Facebook page, you can share from our page to your personal page and share it with your friends. And we'd love to have a great virtual presence for this Justice Run and to support the Justice Club as well as Child Watch and CASA. And just thank you for sharing it, and thanks for your support. And thanks, Savannah, to the Justice Club at WKCTC for all you all are doing and continue to do for Child Watch and CASA. All right. All right. We have a couple more opportunities that are going to be coming up the second full week in April. We have April 14th, the Hate U Give Book Club discussion, and April 16th, we're having our Pancakes for Prevention fundraiser. And I believe Stephanie may have a flyer that she's going to be attaching to the chat bar as well for the Pancakes for Prevention. So have there been many of you, and you can either unmute, you can raise your hand, you can type in the chat bar. Has anybody already read The Hate U Give? Has anybody heard of The Hate U Give? If you have not read this, it is a fantastic read. I found it to be a very quick read, and a wonderful story by Angie Thomas. As you see, it's on the National Book Award long list, and it was a #1 New York Times bestseller. It's a really wonderful read, and we are going to be having a book club discussion around this book on April 14th from 12:30 to 2. That will be a virtual book club discussion. But the wonderful thing about some of these book club discussions, it helps to cover some of the areas that we want to make sure we're offering training in, such as cultural diversity and cultural competency. But the discussion can raise some things that you may not have thought about while you were reading this book. I know there's a movie available as well, but we will be talking about the book because the movie does have some differences, as all movies do that are based on books. But if you read the book and participate in the book club discussion, you will be able to receive 6 CEU credits for the year, and that's already half of the 12 that National CASA requires of each volunteer each year. So it's a wonderful way to have fun reading a book and then discussing it with others online. That will be on Zoom on April 14th. And then our Pancakes for Prevention drive-through fundraiser, Friday, April 16th from 7 to 9 a.m. at Child Watch. Stephanie, would you like to tell a little bit more about this particular fundraiser? I may have asked her to do double duty since she's uploading.
Oh, that's okay. The Pancakes for Prevention is really more of an event to raise awareness and a way to just invite the community to participate with us in just shining a spotlight on child abuse prevention. So the pancakes are complimentary. I think there's going to be some sausage with them, but and our board is mostly putting this on for the community, but they'll be prepared to hand out 200 pancake breakfasts starting at 7 a.m. So first come, first serve. And then they will be accepting donations for those that would like to donate as well. So this is the first time we've done this, but I think it's going to be really fun. We've been kind of sad that we haven't gotten to do all of our other normal in-person events like the Hero Lunch and things like that, but we felt this was a way we could still engage the community and still stay within the COVID regulations. So if you guys are early morning, early birds, then drive on through and get your breakfast.
That's great. Thanks, Stephanie. And you heard it. If you're a volunteer, then your pancakes are on the house. But if you'd like to share this flyer that she'll be uploading, then you can share it with others who may not realize that it's Child Abuse Prevention Month. And maybe that'll give an opportunity for you to tell them a little bit about what you're doing with CASA. So that'd be a great opportunity as well. All right. And the last of our coming soon, we have 2 upcoming trainings. We have tentatively scheduled the second installment of our Fostering Futures training. This is a training that can build on one another, but they are standalone. So you don't have to have attended the first Fostering Futures training to attend this one. It is tentatively scheduled for April the 22nd from 5 to 8 p.m. Jen or Jill, is there anything that you would like to share about this training?
No, just that we would love for anybody to attend. We did get notice that one of our key speakers is not going to be available that date. So that does probably mean we will be changing it. But we'll still leave all the sign up the same, and we'll just let you all know if you sign up about the future date change. But it is going to be about independent living, the transition for our children in the aging out process. So there's going to be lots of resources. In the past, this has been a huge thing we're missing, being able to have resources for our CASAs and helping our children. So this will be a great thing. And I hope you guys, especially if you have teenage cases, I want you on. But if you have any interest in having in the future children, teenagers, then this would be a great training for you as well.
Yes, thank you, Jen. They are great trainings. There's so much information that is out there, but doesn't seem to get to our teen kids. And so as CASA volunteers, we can really step up our advocacy for those teens by participating in these trainings. So I believe there will be other trainings coming after Fostering Futures too as well, so you can stay tuned, but hope that when we get that date then set, that you'll be able to participate in that training. And again, it will be a virtual training. And then coming in May or June, we haven't set a date yet, we'll have our court report writing 201. So you may have noticed we've had a couple of 201 offerings this year. This is the second. And court report writing 201 will be the third in our installment of 201 offerings. So there are some changes coming through from National CASA for some of our standards. And so our local standards are going to be updated, and there'll be some updates coming about that as well, but they will be affecting how we communicate with the court. And so whether you've written court reports for the last 8 years, or you're getting ready to write your first court report post-training, then we would just encourage you to be a part of that training when we do get that scheduled. Do you have any questions about some of our upcoming events or anything? All right. If not, we're going to jump right in then to our first topic of the day, which is our ABCs of courtroom etiquette. So I don't know about the rest of you, but I have noticed being out in public these last several months while following CDC guidelines, people have become much more relaxed. I found myself going into the office in jeans and such, where I would never have done that 3 years ago, just because we don't expect to see a whole lot of people coming into the office. And just Monday, I was at the courthouse and saw more leggings and people in pajamas than I've seen ever before. And they were at the courthouse doing their court business, some coming out of courtrooms, others in other areas. But we've just become a much more relaxed society. And I'm guessing that you've seen some of that as well. So while we have become more comfortable sitting at home behind our own computers, it seemed that court has been much more casual because we felt more casual. We've been more comfortable. But it's important to remember that these are official court proceedings when we are taking part in the court cases that we are assigned to. And these court hearings are being recorded and they are official. And so we need to treat them as such. So whether we're attending court in person or virtually as we are now, it's just very important that we are reminded some of those things that will help us to have that correct court etiquette. And some of the ways that we appear, our behaviors, our communications during these proceedings can have an impact on the outcome of our cases. So it's important that we refresh ourselves on these now and again. So that's what we're here for today. So our ABCs stand for appearance, behavior, and communication. So I don't know, have any of you seen the now famous "I am not a cat" video? If you have not yet seen it, we need to find a link and send it to you because it is hysterical, but it would not be hysterical were it you. And so in this instance, this is a snippet from a live court hearing, which I think is funny because as it says on the screen, recording of this hearing or live stream is prohibited, but apparently it was approved by the court to help others to realize that our virtual world has changed a lot of things. So a lot of us use phones or tablets or even our computers, and we use filters with things like Snapchat or TikTok or other things. It's very important that you always make sure before you log in for court that if you use any of those programs that you do not have a filter setting for Skype, which is what we're using now, or starting April 15th, we'll be using Microsoft Teams. So it's a good idea to try to log in and check your video before you go live. And if you see a filter, that you go immediately to your settings and change that filter. We would love to have overnight success, meaning that CASA is known by everyone because we have something that goes viral and everybody wants to become a CASA volunteer. But we don't want you to have overnight success because you show up in court as a cat. So just beware, and hope this doesn't happen to you. So your appearance is key when you are participating in court. Whether you're in person or whether you're virtual, you need to dress professionally. And when we say dress professionally, it does not mean that you need to be in a suit for ladies or dress or a suit and tie for men. It just needs to be that you have a professional appearance. So basically no denim, no pants with holes, no leggings as pants, no like off the shoulder or spaghetti strap type things when you're in person or virtually. Now, of course, when you're virtual, you wouldn't know if I had pajama pants on my bottom half because I don't plan to stand up and show you, although I'm not, I will tell you that. But whatever is in the view of those who are seeing you on the screen needs to look professional. So it's important too that you find a private and quiet spot that's free from disruptions. You know, we find in our virtual worlds that we have family members, we have children, we have pets, all who like to make their appearance when it's least expected. And we've seen that, you've seen it on the news, you've seen it in viral videos. So we want you to just find a spot that's private. You know, let the loved ones in your home know that you're going somewhere so that you can be in a private spot and that you can't be disrupted for a little while. We also don't want you to be distracted by looking at your phone. So if you have a TV perhaps in front of you, we don't want you to be where the TV is on so that you're constantly looking away from the camera and seem to be distracted. Find that private and quiet spot and make it your own. Be engaged. Keep your phone out of view, whether that's on the computer or whether that's in person, unless you need it for notes or unless your supervisor is texting you about something. You may not be distracted. It may be something that you're looking up for your case and everything, but as much as you can, keep it out of view so that the parties who see you on camera don't perceive that you might be distracted or disrupted by something else. A big thing with all of our cases is maintaining confidentiality. So like today, I don't happen to have anyone home, but I just have a practice of always using my earbuds Mine happens to have a microphone on it. But that way, should my husband come in from his work and is here, then everything that's going on in court is confidential. If you don't have earbuds or a headset of some sort, find that private spot and try to stay out of the earshot of others. Help others to know that you're getting ready to participate in a confidential hearing that you really need for them to respect your privacy and your quiet for that. Confidentiality is one of the biggest things as a CASA volunteer that we have to be aware of. There are so many ways that we can break confidentiality without meaning to. And one of those is just by having your laptop and have someone walk into the room and hear a name or a child's situation that doesn't need to be shared. So those are some ways you can do that. When we're in person, we've had many times where a social worker might approach you in the hallway and start talking about the case. For those of you who have not yet been to court in person, you may not know that the family courtroom is located on the second floor. And during family court day, the DNA docket, it can be full of people awaiting their court hearings. And so just make sure if someone approaches you and starts talking to you about the case, that maybe you can step away from the majority of the folks to have that private conversation, or perhaps step into a room that happens to be available so you can make it more private as well. And sometimes in the courtroom, there may be a case going on and there are other CASA volunteers you haven't seen for a while. And so, you may be chatting about your case or chatting with someone about something else. We want to make sure that anyone who is in the room, family or other persons who may be present, aren't hearing of the confidential details about your case. So that's really, really important. And then the other tips are for virtual. Try to situate yourself with an appropriate background. So typically when I'm in court, I'm sitting on the right side of my desk, which you can't see now because I have moved myself here today so that I can have a blank background. Typically I have pictures of family that are behind me, but in preparing for this, I thought, I need to rethink how I appear in court, because that could be distracting for some people who might know me and may be looking real intently trying to see who are in the pictures behind me. Be careful about taking your court hearing time outside. There are so many things that can happen outside. There can be emergency vehicles that go by with their sirens on. There can be people, a neighborhood child that runs behind you with a ball. There can be limbs falling. There can be all kinds of things. So while it might be a beautiful day and you want to be outside while you're in court, perhaps you can wait for your court hearing outside and then come into that space to have that appropriate background behind you so that it won't be distracting to others. We have a lot of people who like to use the virtual backgrounds that are available through our virtual platforms as well. And sometimes those can be distracting. We've had social workers who have had virtual backgrounds that, if you've ever seen anyone on the news, like a weather person that steps in and out of the picture because the picture kind of morphs to that green screen that's really behind them instead of the video that's showing behind them. And so sometimes that can be really distracting as well. So just be aware of your location and do everything that you can to find a location that has an appropriate and as neutral a background as possible. And I would recommend always sitting up at a desk or a table. I have a tendency to slouch. So, sitting in a straight back chair at a desk helps me to kind of be more engaged. It makes me feel more formal and helps me, I hope, to present in a more professional manner than if I was sitting on a sofa where I might get a little sleepy or tired, or a little more comfortable where I'm going to slouch and it might not have the best appearance if I'm, in a comfortable spot where I need to yawn and stretch and all of those sorts of things. We have some people that will be sitting on a bed. And I've actually found a couple of people that I find have been able to make that work because they have a bed frame that really looks like a beautiful background, and they're able to maintain that professional attitude at doing so. But we would really recommend that, if possible, that you would sit at a desk or a table. I think it will help you to feel more that you're in a formal hearing and to help you be able to appear that way as well. And the last tip for virtual is, if possible, we recommend using a computer, whether that's a PC or a laptop, because you'll have all of the all of the things that are afforded when you're on a computer. So you don't have to swipe a screen to get to a certain setting to mute your phone or to unmute. I can't tell you how many hearings I've been on where I see people's fingers all the time swiping so that they can get to where they can unmute their phones. Or perhaps they're getting messages. And so when they're speaking during their the time that they're speaking up in court, we're hearing the buzzing because they've got their phone on silent, but they have the vibration on, and you hear the buzzing of all of their text messages that are popping in or notifications that are coming in. So it's preferable. We know that not everybody has a working laptop or computer. So if you do use a phone or a tablet, please just always check the settings ahead of time. Make sure that any notifications are turned off, that your phone is silenced with no vibration, but that your microphone is available. If you need to check that out with your supervisor, I'm sure they'd be happy to check that out with you ahead of time. And one of the ways, and they can tell you more specifics about that, is before a hearing, if you're on your phone or on a tablet, be sure to go into your apps that's on that device and make sure that the setting allows for your microphone to be muted and unmuted, because we've had so many people that have appeared in court and their mics in the settings of that app have been muted, even though their phone seems to be working properly. So there are just some of those kinds of things that can help with your appearance. It can help in how you present the case and present the points that are important to you that you want to make sure are heard during your court hearing. If our appearance is less than, then the likelihood is that the points that we're trying to make won't be heard with the same fervor that they might if your appearance were such. Okay, so that's our A of our ABCs, appearance. Any questions on appearance before we move on? I know a lot of these things I'm going to be sharing today seem like only a knucklehead wouldn't know them, but believe me, we have all had instances, either ourselves or with people we've worked with, where we have seen some of these things take place, and that's why they appear on our list.
Yes, I saw the GAL on a call from his truck, and he was wearing shorts and
Yes,
chewing tobacco and
yes,
I'm
yes. I was
thinking,
going to, yes.
I was thinking probably the judge probably said something to him later.
Yes, yes, Jim, you're right. I think that several of us remember that hearing very well. And that private and quiet spot sometimes may be your vehicle if that's the only place where you can be free from distractions. But we have this attorney that Jim's speaking of was driving. His phone was where his camera was on, but it was sitting, what we must assume was in a cup holder. And in the second cup holder right behind it was his spittoon for his chew. So every time he raised that cup with the chew, what do you think our cameras saw? All of his spittle in that, and was in short shorts. So we mostly saw his upper leg.
Yes.
That's not the appearance that we would like for you to have when you're in a court hearing. Now, early on, we were all learning virtual, sometimes because usually when you're on a Zoom call, a Skype call, a Microsoft team, your picture is much smaller than the other parties appear on your screen. But you have to remember that on another person's screen, you're appearing larger. And so I think we got comfortable in the fact that, oh, we're appearing virtually. Some people didn't know when their cameras were on and when they were off. So thank you, Jim. It's really good to be aware of those sorts of things because they can make an impact on how well you're heard or whether you're heard or not. So thanks for that reminder of we will not name names, but
Well, no, but I think the point is that you should be able to see yourself and check yourself, and because you can see yourself.
however, if you're on a phone, and that's again another reason why we like to remind you to, if possible, to use a computer or a laptop. If you're on your phone, typically, unless you know very well how to use all of these different apps, you may not know how to put it on gallery view. So all you see is speaker view. So in those instances, you might not see yourself, or you might see yourself as a tiny microscopic little picture at the top. So it's a good point, Jim. Thank you so much. Always check your video before you go live. We do not want anyone having to declare to any of our judges that I am not a cat or the like. All right. Thank you so much, Jim. Any questions or any other comments about appearance before we move on? If not, we'll move on to our B, behavior. Again, many of these things overlap, whether it's in person or virtual. Some items are specific to which way we're participating in court. I will tell you that I know that the judge is hopeful that we will be able to be back in person. And for those of you who have never stepped foot into the courtroom where you're going to be serving, I do hope that you will attend in-person court at least once. I do understand, at least from Judge Henschel in McCracken County Court, that even when we have the opportunity to go back in person, she will be offering the option for people to appear virtually, at least for some time. So it's good to know how we should behave in either setting. So always arrive on time. Of course, in person, that means arrive to your courthouse in where your court proceeding is going to be occurring. We all know that our court hearings on DNA dates tend to run late, but we still want you to be there on time, because if your court hearing is at 11 and you've talked to your supervisor and hear that we're still on the 8:30 docket, you're thinking, well, I've got plenty of time. Anytime 11 or 11:01 or anytime after, the judge could jump to the 11 o'clock docket and call that case. There are many circumstances why she might do that. And some of those circumstances have to do with that she does try her very best with all of the different things going on to make sure that our CASAs don't have to wait too terribly long, if at all possible. But there are cases where there are lawyers that have conflicting hearings, and so she'll need to call them out of order. Or perhaps there's a situation where we have a parent who's incarcerated and the jail can only be have that parent available for court between a certain amount of time. So always be on time, and know that if you have to wait, it's not the judge's intention that you would have to wait, but we could be called out of order. We want that too for virtual hearings. Your supervisor will keep you updated, typically by text, but have your computer ready to go. And then if you need to be somewhere else, just keep your phone nearby so that if you get an SOS, your case has been called, that you can jump on right away. Regardless of whether you're in person or virtual, try to refrain from eating, drinking, or chewing gum. Now, I want to kind of clarify that. Of course, if you're in person and you are going to be in person there for some time, and you're going to be in the courtroom and you're in the gallery, so basically you're behind where the action is happening, you can very inconspicuously take a drink of water. If you're going to be there for several hours, you might have some kind of a snack. That's okay. What we're really talking about is during the time when your case is called. That seems like that would be obvious, right? But in our virtual world, we have found, and I have been, I've been guilty of doing this as well, taking a drink of water, because Jen and Stephanie and I are sometimes on for hours and hours on end, and our cameras may be on. If you're on the court hearing, you're on the link, but your camera is not on and your mic is not on, you can eat, drink, and chew gum to your heart's content. What I'm talking about is once it comes time for your case and it has been called, that you spit out the gum, you put aside the food, you put aside the drink, and that you refrain from that during the time that your court hearing is happening. I have had a couple of volunteers who have been in one of our more formal hearings where they were going to be testifying, and they'd been on a hearing for 3 or 4 hours. At that point, if you need to take a drink of water, you need to have something, even just a bite of a protein bar or something to keep you going, just stop your video and turn it off for just a moment so that you can do that. And then when you're ready, turn it back on. I would ask that you don't do that every 2 to 3 minutes or even every 5 to 10 minutes. If you need to do that once an hour or something like that, then that is absolutely appropriate. But we're really talking about what's happening when your camera is on and your court hearing is in progress there. Try to resist the temptation to surf the web or use your phone while your camera is on and you're on a hearing. Now, I know that in our virtual world, I know that I've been texting with volunteers while we're on camera because there was something that we needed to communicate while that hearing was going on. That's an exception to this rule. But I'll tell you, if you're like me, for those of you who wear glasses, we can tell if you're surfing the web and changing sites and everything And I can tell, because I've been on so many of these now, and I'm sure Stephanie and Jen could attest to that as well, that we can tell even if you don't wear glasses, if you're not engaged and you're looking at other pages. But just be aware to try to resist that temptation. It's easy to do when you're virtual, but try to resist. And in either situation, if you need to walk away or if you just need to stand up and stretch your back during court, in person court, try to wait for a break in the action. So maybe between cases, when cases are being called, or perhaps the judge is waiting to get someone on a phone call or someone via Skype or Microsoft Teams or something like that. If you're on virtual court, then you can just temporarily, again, stop your video, stand up, stretch. If you need to walk away to take a break, just make sure that if you walk away, that your computer is not accessible to someone who could accidentally overhear what's going on in the court proceedings. It's important to remember that it is illegal to record any part of any hearing on your device. These are confidential juvenile hearings. So please remember to use your phones with caution. You might be texting your supervisor, but could it appear or be perceived that you're doing something that would be unlikely, something unjust, like recording? So just use caution when doing that. The court hearings are a part of the official court record. And so these recordings will be a part of that official record. And so anything you say and anything that you may be doing on camera may become a part of that official record. So we want to make sure that you understand that that's the case. And then also we ask in either setting that you don't interrupt another person while they're talking, that you don't use expressive body language to try to get the attention of the court or the judge. And we do always ask in virtual court that you stay muted until you're asked to speak or until such time as it seems appropriate that you need to share something you're doing. Can anybody share what are some examples of expressive body language that could be distracting or disrespectful? Can you think of any?
Rolling your eyes.
Okay, rolling your eyes. I see Jim waving your hand in front of the computer. And I'm sorry, I can only see 2 or 3 people. Yeah. Rolling your eyes is a big one. And we've had, the judge has called people out in McCracken County Court for eye rolling. I'll just let you know. And that was in person. So she had to have really good eyes. She wasn't looking right at your face. What are some other examples of expressive body language?
Oh, I have one,
Okay.
Kathy.
Yes,
Well,
Kathy.
I'm just thinking of actually 2, but things I've seen parents do in court, cross their arms real expressively and hard, and or kicking your foot like real fast, like crossing your legs and like kicking your foot like really fast or really obviously.
Okay, good. Yeah. So that would be for in person with the foot, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And the big kind of harumph kind
Right.
of crossing. Okay. Great. Any other things you can think of? All right. Well, one that I have seen from some of our seasoned CASAs, I don't know, have any of you all ever gotten frustrated when you've been a part of a court hearing?
Yes.
I would say most of you, if you've been involved in a DNA court proceeding, you have at some point gotten frustrated. And I've seen the, I mean, the whole body language just changes and the arms go up over the head. I have seen parents, as we've been doing virtual, all of a sudden they're on their phone, they stand up and start walking around, and all of a sudden people are starting to get motion sickness because it becomes very distracting when you're getting up and moving around, and they've gotten worked up, so they stand up and they're marching around and that sort of thing. So those are some examples of some of that expressive body language. It's a way, we all speak through our body language, and it's a way that we do communicate with people, but it does show a behavior that is not professional. We're going to be talking about taking some deep breaths and things. Take that deep breath. You want to roll your eyes, find a way to keep yourself from rolling your eyes. If you have to pinch yourself, if you get really frustrated and you can just tell it's going to show all over your face, temporarily shut off your video. get that out of your system, shake it out, and turn that video back on.
Can I
Go-
say one other thing real quick?
Of course, Kathy, go ahead.
We just started watching this TV show called Lie to Me.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but I think even though it's fictional, the expressions on the face and what they mean, a lot of them are universal. And I think it might be good just to watch sometimes, because you can pick up maybe a child is lying to you, or maybe he's trying to hide something shameful that happened to him or her. And we just started watching it. We've only seen 3 of them, but I am really trying to pay attention to the face language, because there is a lot that we say with our faces.
Kathy, that
Absolutely.
is such a good show.
Yeah, well, our pastor told us about it. We hadn't heard of it, and we're just now getting into it. But yeah,
It's called Lie to Me.
yes.
Hey, there you go. So that could be some of
And-
your,
and
perhaps some of your training.
They have a fictional story, but then they'll show real people that use that. Like they'll show 2 or 3 in a row of real people that use that same expression, and it always means the same thing. So, part of our jobs is trying to figure out, are people lying to me, or especially for me, because I'm very gullible by nature. But this really, is something I think we actually could use, is what I'm saying. So.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to check it out, and that may be something that could be really helpful. Sometimes just raising your eyebrows or putting your hand, putting your face in your hand, right? There are so many different things that even virtually, where they can only see this small portion of you, can speak volumes, and it shows behavior that is, everything we do is addressed to the court. So we're not showing, when we do those kinds of things, our disrespect isn't showing toward the party that's frustrating us. That's showing disrespect to the court. And so that is something I know that none of us want to do. So that's great. Thank you so much for that. And there's something, if you guys are looking for something to watch, you can look up Lie to Me. That'll be great. Okay. Very good. So behavior. I think those are, again, they should be things that aren't new to us. But again, when we're, especially I think in our virtual world, because we are more comfortable at home, sometimes we forget. Even such thing as sitting back and maybe a sigh, whether your microphone's on or not, just changing that body language. Sometimes you just have to be very aware of how you're presenting when you're on camera. I think that's the biggest takeaway. Very good. Thank you guys for your comments. All right. So the C of our ABC is communication. So again, I just said it, whether in person or virtual, we are always addressing the court. So anytime you have something to share, even if you are speaking to something that was said by an attorney or a parent, always address the court, not the parent or social worker. We are appointed by the court, and that is who we answer to. So we always want to address the court. When we're virtually, I'm trying very hard to do that, because I want to see your faces that are over to the side of my computer here, but I'm trying to look right into the camera. Every once in a while, if someone's speaking, you may look to that person and look for their picture. But when it's your time to speak, speak as if you're speaking directly to the judge, and the judge is living just behind that camera that's in your device. That just helps to provide another air of professionalism. Be sure to speak clearly and confidently. Raise your hand if you have something that you want to say that hasn't already been addressed. And virtually, be sure to speak a little slower than you might normally. I get so tickled. We have a couple of CASA volunteers who I think are speed talkers, because they just talk so fast. And sometimes I have to go say, whoa, 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 slow down. Remember that, you want for people to be able to hear you if you're speaking. I know for many of you, you'd rather not speak up in court if you didn't have to. And so if you have to, you want people to be able to hear and understand what it is that you're trying to communicate. And we all have, experienced the delays that come with having a virtual platform. So maybe allow for a pause when people start speaking, so that you're not speaking over someone. Allow for that pause. The thing that I hate the most is sometimes I try to speak up for the volunteer, and I realize by the time it comes through, I'm speaking over the judge. And so I'll always try to excuse myself, excuse me, Your Honor. She's very gracious about it, as I'm sure our other judges in our other counties are. I'm speaking from experience, and my only experience is with McCracken County Court. So forgive me if I'm not speaking directly about Ballard, Lyon, or Livingston, but I have not had any firsthand knowledge in those courts. So I'll refer to Judge Henschel mostly. If you're unable to hear when you're in person, I know that the courthouse provides hearing assistance devices. Don't hesitate to ask for them. I know that they'll have to go through a pretty good sanitation, as we go back to in person, but still do ask for that, and don't be afraid to ask for it to be sanitized. And so if you're there on time, you can ask prior to your court hearing so that you're all set when it's time to go. Also, ask for something to be repeated if you didn't hear it or if you don't understand it. The worst thing is that you don't really think you heard it, but instead of asking, you just try to answer something which may be totally unrelated or may not be conveying what you wanted to share about that particular subject. So please ask for a question to be repeated. I will say that I have found in these virtual hearings that using earbuds or a headset have been a great help for me. Because a lot of times parents, if they're calling in on a phone or they have unstable internet, it's hard to understand them anyway. And so if you have that headset or those earbuds, it's going to make everything a lot clearer for you. And especially if extra outside noise or your hearing is a concern, I suggest that. Anymore you can get an inexpensive pair of headsets or earbuds that have a built-in microphone, and they won't break the bank. But if you can't have that, just maybe you can get just some earbuds, simple earbuds for yourself. And then the last thing that I have here is always ask for a question to be clarified if you don't understand it. And I'm going to get into that more when we talk about tips for testifying and speaking up. Don't try to speak to something that you're not absolutely sure what's being asked of you. Again, this is being recorded and it's on the record, and we want to be able to share accurate and complete information about the case that we're advocating for. One thing I want to go back to, I just want to make sure that we address this. So when I talked about speaking clearly and confidently, if you want to speak up about something that has not already been addressed, I want to assure you, if you are at all uncertain, the judge has read your report, most likely more than once. She has taken multiple colored highlighters and highlighted your report. She has underlined your report. She knows how you feel about the things that you've included in your report. So I realize that sometimes you feel that something maybe has been overlooked. And if it's on your list of things that you absolutely want to make sure there's a court order for, then by all means address it. But most often, if you're going to speak up in court, it would be to clarify something, to ask for an order that has not yet been ordered, or to address something that you've learned since the time of writing your court report. We know that you all are passionate about your advocacy for these children. You love these children. You want what's best for these children. Sometimes the judge, though she may totally agree with what your recommendations or some of the things that you've addressed in your report, she may not be able to address them for legal reasons. And none of us are lawyers. We have some non-practicing lawyers among us, and that's okay because you may know more than us. But we just want to make sure that we are not causing pain or difficulty for parents. Believe me, they feel it, even if they're acting out and they're not doing anything on their case plan. If it's in the report, we don't need to bring that up again to shame them or to hurt them any more than they're already hurting. They may act like a total know-it-all, or maybe angry or lying outright in court, but they're still a human being who has feelings. And so we don't want to add to that. We also don't want to continue to bring up points that the judge is well aware of and everyone in the court is aware of that may come across as us being biased. And I just want to bring that up because we've had a lot of instances here lately, it seems, maybe just in my cases, where we're at goal change or we're about to be at goal change. And we really feel like it's best that the goal be changed and we move toward adoption. But there are circumstances that cause the court to need to pause to consider whether or not it's time for a goal change because of the legal standings. And the judge very sometimes with heartbreak shares with our training classes that up until the point that the goal has been changed, that the court's first priority is not the child's best interest. We are always going to say to you, we want you to advocate for that child's best interest because that's who we are, that's what we do. But sometimes because of the legal standards, that can't be the priority at the time, and it's going to frustrate you. And you're going to want to speak up, and your passion and your emotion and your frustration is going to come through. So when we're in in-person court, if you've been in in-person court with me, you might notice that I've put my hand on your leg, or I've just touched your pen that you're wanting to, busily get moving, something of that nature. Virtually, I can't really do that for you. Your supervisors can't do that for you. So just talk about it with your supervisor ahead of time. And we're going to get into this more. I'm kind of jumping ahead. But we want you to be able to share what you feel is important that's being shared. But we want those things to be addressed in a way that's professional and understanding that while it may be important for the court, I guarantee you the judge knows exactly how you feel and has your court report marked up tremendously. So she does know. All right. All right. Anything before we move on? I just found this little do and don't in the courtroom is kind of fun, and a lot of the things were on our list as well. Do you have any questions, comments about any of those ABCs for court etiquette? All right. No questions, comments? All right. Well, we'll keep moving then. And if you have something, we can always back up. All right. We're going to move on to the tips for speaking up or testifying in court. And I just want to assure you, if speaking up in court just gets your heart to going at an increased rate, or you feel like you're going to be sick, you will get more comfortable the more that you do it. And there are instances, especially in the beginning, if you really don't feel comfortable speaking up in court, you can talk with your supervisor and devise a plan that works for you. But there are some best practices in speaking up in court so that you can show the respect to the court and all parties that they deserve. We respect the bench. And so we want to do everything that we can to be respectful in our communication with the court. And I have had to speak up a lot in the last over 6 years, and I haven't always done it well. And so these tips are some I've taken from a couple of other sources, but most of them are things that I've learned from my own speaking up in court, from the 2 times in the last 6+ years that I've had to testify, and tips that I've shared with volunteers one-on-one who have been called to testify and that they found has been helpful to them. So I hope it will be helpful to you. In the first 5 years that I was with the CASA program, I think I knew of 3 of my volunteers who had ever been called on to testify. So 3 volunteers in my first 5 years. Since last October, I think I have worked one-on-one with staff or volunteers in 5 different cases, and that's since August of last year. So it's becoming more prevalent in our cases. So that's why we want to give you some of these best practices and tips, and our hope is that they'll be helpful to you so that you don't become anxiety ridden and that you can share the information and get across the points that you want to get across in these opportunities before the court. So testifying doesn't typically occur until those more formal hearings that are near the end of your case, such as the goal change hearings, perhaps a permanent custody hearing, or a termination of parental right hearing. But every once in a while, we'll get into a hearing and you haven't been subpoenaed or been told beforehand that you're going to testify. And so we're hoping that these tips will help you if you get caught off guard, or help you with some of that anxiety that you might find if you're testifying. So we're going to start with just speaking up in court. And so speaking up in court is any time that your case is before the court and the judge asks, CASA, do you have anything that you'd like to share? So our first tip is to please wait until you're asked to share, or if at the end the judge asks if there's anything else that should come up. If it appears that the case is wrapping up and she's going to be moving on to the next case on the docket, please raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask the judge to speak, We want to always maintain a respectful attitude and always address the court with respect, such as, excuse me, Your Honor, or thank you, Your Honor, or excuse me, Judge, may I speak? We always want to have a respectful attitude. And again, if you're nervous about speaking up, you're not exactly sure, what should I speak up about? What shouldn't I speak up about? Get with your supervisor before your hearing, perhaps when you're finalizing your court report, and kind of devise a plan. If there's something that I feel like needs to be addressed, how should I do that? Or I'm scared to death about interrupting the judge, how should we do that? And so Jen or Stephanie or I may say, well, I don't mind to interrupt and say, excuse me, Your Honor, I believe the CASA volunteer had something they'd like to share. And so that way you can kind of avoid having to interrupt if that makes you uncomfortable. And another thing that may help you is to talk with your supervisor. What are those top things that you want to make sure are addressed in court? Because then when the emotions start flying, as we all know who have been a part of our DNA cases, our parents typically have emotions, whether it's sadness, anger, frustration, disrespect, whatever those emotions and however they come out in their communication, they're going to fly. So if you have either highlighted your court report or made maybe a list of those top items that you want to make sure, regardless of anything else, I want to make sure these things are addressed, then that will keep you focused when it comes time for you to share or the judge asks what you would like to make sure the court knows. So many times, if you don't have those notes, highlights, or those things that you want to make sure are addressed, we can have a tendency to ramble. And a lot of times that's simply just because of nerves, and we'll cover things that have already been addressed in court. You may remember that anything that we are putting in our recommendation is basically something that we're asking the court to order. So we're asking for a court order that this would happen, that this would happen, that this would happen, that this would happen. So if there is something that there's not been a court order for, even if it's in your recommendations and you feel like you want to ask for that court order, just go over that with your supervisor ahead of time, and then you can bring that up if it hasn't been ordered at that point. Okay. So again, I said, refrain from sharing information that's already in your report. The judge has read it. The judge could probably almost has it committed to memory. She will tell every training class, and she will sometimes even show them, since we've been virtual, here's a court report for tomorrow. See all these highlights, see all these underlines. I know exactly how you stand on these different items. But there are a lot of moving pieces, as we know, in these court proceedings. So if you feel that there's something that hasn't been addressed, or you have new information that you've learned since the writing of your court report, then please, you can speak up and share that information. One important thing, I think, and we've touched on it briefly before, always address your remarks to the judge. You are addressing the court, not to an attorney or a parent. And that's hard to do sometimes, because a parent has said, well, that CASA volunteer hasn't even tried to meet me, or that CASA volunteer told me this, or that CASA volunteer. And we can, you can start to feel those emotions just bubbling up. Take a deep breath. A lot of times, not only will that help to calm your nerves, it will help you to slow down your speech, to speak more confidently and clearly. And it will also take the edge off whatever emotion is beginning to bubble up inside of you. We have some hot buttons, just like parents have hot buttons. And so just take that deep breath. That will help you. And oops, somehow I skipped that. Sorry. Take that deep breath and then address all your remarks to the court and to the judge. And again, looking straight into the camera so that the judge can feel that you are addressing the court. And then something that I feel is really important, because we have had some of this come up. Once the judge has made her ruling, you've shared how you feel, the judge has made her ruling, even if you disagree, the matter is closed for this court hearing. That may sound harsh. You have made your case through your written report, which is our most vital tool, and you maybe have also spoken up on a particular subject. The parents are going to continue to speak up and be disrespectful if they don't agree with something. Sometimes the attorneys will also speak up, even though the court has ruled on that subject. For us, that way to be respectful and professional, excuse me, is once the judge has ruled, the matter is closed for this court hearing. It doesn't mean that we're not going to bring it up at the next court hearing again and ask for a court order to be brought on that again, but it's closed for this hearing. And then just reach out to your supervisor, because I know it's frustrating. I know it's frustrating when you feel like you are the person who knows that child or those children the best of anyone that's participating in this court proceeding, and you don't feel that you've been heard. It is most often a legality. So call your supervisor, text your supervisor. If they're still on a docket and they can't talk to you right then, text them and say, I need to schedule a time that I can talk to you about this. Don't let that frustration bubble up and build up inside you without discussing that with your supervisor. Okay. Any questions about tips for speaking up? Or does anybody have a story about the first time that you had to speak up in court and about your nerves? Anything that you'd like to share with the group while we're here? No.
Liz, I will add, this is Gwen. It amazes me that she does kind of remember us. She really does. Every time I speak or she calls on me, it feels like she remembers me, and I do believe she does. So you do make an impression.
Yes, absolutely. I always laugh when when I've been in person with the judge and Vicki Charette. Some of you may or may not know her. If you've been in person court, Vicki always sat to her, well, it was on our left to the judge's right, not the clerk who's recording all the proceedings. But they will always tell me that Vicki brings her reports to the judge like this, like they're on a silver platter. If it's a CASA report, she says the only thing that comes to her on that silver platter, which I think is so funny. She does know you. She remembers you. She sees your name on the court report, but she will say, oh, I remember Gwen. Gwen was on this case, and she remembers when you have participated in the way that you advocated fiercely, but respectfully for your CASA children. So it's amazing. I can't imagine how many different names and faces and people she runs across just in a Thursday docket. But she does remember you, and she will review probably not only your current court report, but she will likely, depending upon where it is in the course of the case, go back and review your previous court reports. So when it comes time for a goal change hearing or a permanent custody hearing, and when it's time for TPR, she goes back and reviews all the CASA reports, sometimes if she doesn't review any other of those reports. So she does remember us, and she values your input. Very good. Thank you, Gwen. Anyone else?
Liz, it's Debbie.
Yes. Hi, Debbie.
Hey, I think it's so important that we get ready for those tough questions. I'll never forget the first question the judge asked me was, what is your opinion on this goal change? And there you sat. And of course, being a social worker, it wasn't too terrible, but I can't imagine, had I not had that previous experience, how tough that was, because there you're sitting in person with the parent, with the foster parent, with everyone, and they're looking right at you. And that's a tough question to have to answer. Yes. So those tough questions are really great to go over with your supervisor prior to goal change hearing and things like that. And I also wanted to say, I think the great thing about our judge is she does remember. She pays attention to those fine details that so many judges don't. And it's just amazing that how much respect that I feel she has for me and that I do for her in return. I mean, I just feel like we're blessed to have a judge like her. So
yes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes. Thinking through some of those tough questions. I saw Laura has a raised hand, and then I think Lisa.
I just wanted to piggyback on what you just said. I think that's where the court report is so important to find out for yourself. What are the most important goals or, aspects that you want to emphasize going forward? And when you have that in place, you can really advocate for that. And, when it's your time to speak, you can really say something about it. If you don't really have an idea of where you're going or what's the most important thing. And I think that it really has to be the most important, you really have to think about the priority. And that, is what you have to be ready to be able to advocate for. So.
Excellent. Yeah. What are those most important? That's like, what are those top items? that you feel are the most important thing for this hearing.
Yeah.
And Laura, to your point, it's going to depend on, and Debbie to hers as well, where are we in the process of this of this court case? Is it something where it's a review and we're going to come back in a month or 3 months? Are we at goal change where we need to make sure some of these points get home? Are we at disposition? Are we appointed early on? And at disposition, the main focus of the dispositional hearing is where should that child be placed officially? There's an emergency kind of temporary, but this makes it official at disposition. So yeah, thinking about those kinds of things and what are those top items. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Lisa, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, and you may be going to address this later on, but I've had several times where the judge will ask, does CASA have anything to add or something to that? And a lot of times I don't have because everything has been addressed. But is it better to bring up something than to say no?
That's a great question, Lisa. And I think that the answer is, if everything has been addressed, you can say, I believe everything that I had concerns about, has been addressed, Your Honor. And just make a simple statement that you have nothing to add to what's been addressed.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So I think, does CASA have anything to add? I'd rather you speak up and say, no, Your Honor, I believe we've addressed everything I'd hoped to address today, than to just not speak up. So speaking up, especially virtually, because she may, oftentimes she'll be asking for an attorney. She'll say, our GAL, do you have a recommendation? And we sit for silence. And that person has been kicked off the meeting somehow and nobody knew they were gone. So I think it's important for us to always speak up, to at least say, no, Your Honor, I believe everything's been addressed that I wanted to address, or no, Your Honor, I believe everything's been addressed. However you might do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. That's a great question. Yeah, because we may not always have something that needs to be added at the end. We may have, everything may have been covered. And sometimes your court report was so excellent and the parties involved, including the GAL, have kind of brought out some of those points that were important to us that were also important to them. And so it was all addressed because you had an excellent court report. So please know that court report is the best tool for advocating for your child. It's better than speaking up in person, very honestly, because then all parties are there and can address those things. Okay. And it becomes an official part of the record. I do want to mention, I'm sorry, somebody else about to speak up? I do want to mention too, because we did have this happen recently, and this is not really about speaking up, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. We had recently where we had a CASA volunteer who was assigned basically at temporary removal hearings. And that is becoming much more common than it was in my first 4 years with the program. Excuse me. And so we had been involved with the case long enough that we provided a report for adjudication. Now, typically in the past, we never provided reports for adjudication because there had not yet been an official finding of abuse or neglect. However, in some of our other court systems, the 45 days may be waived much more. It may be more common for that 45 days to be waived for the adjudication hearings than it is in our own court in McCracken County here. So we discussed it and decided that yes, the volunteer would provide a report. So we got to court, and the first thing out of the mother's attorney's mouth was, after Austin Martin, who's our prosecuting attorney, spoke up and said that he would like for the judge to take judicial notice of all of the testimony from the temporary removal hearing, except for anything that was hearsay, because adjudication is a formal hearing. And so the first thing out of the mother's attorney's mouth was, I'd like to object to the CASA volunteers report and ask that it be struck from the record.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm thinking about, for example, Donna and Susan, who have not yet had cases. Say it's your very first court appearance, it's your very first court report. You can imagine how devastating that would be to think that you spent all of this time and energy writing the best report that you could to provide all the details that you could regarding your interaction with the child and with the other parties and your concerns and your recommendations, only to hear that it was going to be struck from the report. So I spoke with the judge, not specific to this case, however, she knew exactly what I was talking about, to ask about how we should proceed in those. And we did talk about the fact that when you're talking about an adjudication hearing, a disposition hearing, or then those hearings that we talked about where testifying is going to be happening, and we're going to be going to that next, but the goal change hearings, a permanent custody hearing, a termination of parental rights hearing, those are the formal court proceedings that you'll be participating in. Most of the others, a temporary removal hearing, hearsay is allowed. The review hearings, at least Judge Henschel handles most of those very informally, so she doesn't use the formal, formal proceedings. But in those that I mentioned, the adjudication, disposition, goal change, permanent custody, and TPRs, they are formal hearings. And so the rules, certain rules apply to those hearings that don't apply to other hearings. So as the judge will say to anyone who asks, she cannot unread a report. So we submitted the report. She has that report. Even if it's struck from the record, it's the official record for that hearing. It doesn't mean that that court report gets shredded and is no longer a part of the formal court record. It is. It doesn't mean that she won't have read it. She will have. It doesn't mean that she won't refer back to it for future hearings. She will. And I can say this for Judge Henschel because I've talked with her about this. So I just want to make it very clear that if something that you say or your court report, as it did for this brand new volunteer, gets struck from the record, do not take it personally. It is the rules of evidence and such for a court hearing, and it is still a part of the formal court file. And as the judge said, I can't unread it. I will have read it, and I will review it again. So I just kind of wanted to address that as we were going along through that kind of string.
And what would the point be of asking it to be stricken? I guess I missed something here.
Well,
why even ask that if it's really not?
Because for that particular hearing, the judge she is not supposed to weigh any hearsay, which everything we do is technically hearsay.
Oh.
We speak to the child. The child's not in court. So in a formal hearing, those few formal hearings we talked about, we can't say, well, the child told me. That's inadmissible. We can't say, well, I talked to the social worker and she said that's inadmissible. So it's hearsay. So in those formal hearings, most of the time, our court reports are completely hearsay. We can talk to a doctor, but the doctor's not there to refute or to back us up.
Right.
The social worker is, so we can say, well, the social worker told me, because they can turn around and ask the social worker, did you tell the CASA volunteer that? But most of our reports in formal hearings are full of hearsay. So that's why that would have been struck from the record.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Kathy. All right.
Liz, can I add a brief point, please?
Sure.
I just wanted to add that these court reports are so important, as we all know, but I spent 4 or 5 hours last month preparing a special court report for a special hearing that we had. And I spent so much time trying to get in touch with the guardian ad litem and all this other, and here's the thing, on the day of court, the lawyer for one of the individuals withdrew the motion to move the children's placement. And I can remember feeling so discouraged because I felt like I had put so much time and energy into that report. And then for us just not to have the hearing, it was somewhat frustrating. But I will say that in speaking with some of the individuals from court later, I specifically asked the social worker, why did they withdraw the motion? And as it turned out, it was a result of my court report. And that's why, because it included incomes and things like that. And that's why the attorney went ahead and withdrew the motion to place the kids in a different placement. So always know that we may put a lot of work into it, but I think she reads them, and they're always worth it in the end, whether we really know it or not.
Exactly. Thank you, Debbie, for that. Yeah, we may not know why that motion was withdrawn, but in Debbie's case, she was able to find out it was because of some of the things she had included in her report. It's like our sword. It's our best tool to be able to do the work that we do. So please don't be discouraged. And if you feel some of those emotions, that discouragement, that frustration, again, reach out to your supervisor and talk through it with her. That's self-care for yourself. and being able to work through that. And I was able to spend 2 different times on the phone with a volunteer who wrote her very first report, and then it was struck from the record. And she came to understand, as much as she still didn't like it, she came to understand and was not so discouraged anymore, and understood that she still had a major impact on the case. Thanks for sharing that, Debbie.
Liz, and I'm just going to add that recently the McCracken County attorney had reached out to me just to brag on your all's CASA reports. He was bragging to another judge in another court, just saying every court needs to have CASA as a part of their court system, because you get so much good information in these reports that in other cases they don't get. So again, they're very highly regarded by the attorneys as well. And Deborah, I love that story. I'm so glad that you were able to follow up and find out. That just gave me the chills, that, and I know I've read the reports. They're very thorough and have very accurate details in them. And those are some of the best reports that I see from, especially this group here. All of those factual details that those attorneys are so grateful for. Everybody in the courtroom is. So we're very proud of your reports too, and everybody just keep up the good work.
That's excellent. Thank you. Yeah, we sometimes need to get a little pat on the back. I mean, you guys are volunteering, and I think sometimes, well, I know that there are parties that are in the courtroom that don't realize that you're not a paid employee of someone, and so I just think it's tremendous that we get such professional and thorough reports from you folks who are professional citizen volunteers who are giving of your time because you care about kids who are in these situations. So thank you. We can't say it enough. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to move on into the tips for testifying in court. And I just want to remind you, there are the formal hearings. Those are the only ones that you'll generally be asked to testify in. And likely you're never going to be asked to be a part of an adjudication or a dispositional hearing unless you're in another county where they waive that 45 days and maybe it's been several months and you've really gotten a good handle on the case. But typically for McCracken County, you're not going to be called to testify until the end stages of your case. So again, we're looking at goal change, permanent custody, and termination of parental rights. All the rules of evidence apply. And I want to make sure that you're all aware, because I know that someone who's been a CASA volunteer with us for about 4.5, 5 years testified recently. And she was kind of blindsided when I told her, so she really wasn't blindsided in court, but when she didn't realize she wasn't going to get to listen to everyone who was going to testify ahead of her. So just know from the very start, if you're asked to testify in one of these kind of end-stage hearings in your case, you are not likely to be able to listen to the other people who testify. Most attorneys at the very beginning are going to ask for the formal separation of witnesses. This is not personal to you because they don't like you. It is not because it is because they think some witnesses could be influenced by someone else's testimony, or that a witness might remember something a little differently because of what they heard than what they might just share from their own remembrances and so forth. So please don't take it personally. It is a formal hearing. And so this is, I would say in 99% of cases, an attorney, particularly for the parents, are going to ask for the formal separation of witnesses. And all that means is that your supervisor can be on the entirety of the hearing taking notes, and then either the court or your supervisor will let you know when it's your turn to testify, so that you'll either step out of the room if you're in person and someone will come out and call for you to come in, or virtually you'll get a text or a phone call or something to tell you to please log on because it's your turn to testify. So it hurts people's feelings. It's hurt people's feelings ever since I started this job. It is not personal. It's because this is a formal hearing, okay? We want you to be prepared. Review all your Optima dockets and any documents that you think might be helpful so that they're fresh in your mind. I usually tell people, perhaps some dates you'll want to know, because sometimes they just ask it when they're kind of laying the foundation and it's the person who called you to testify. How long have you been a CASA volunteer? Maybe go back and look at, gosh, when was my sworn in date? When did I start as a CASA? Or when did I get appointed to this case first? And all of that you can find in Optima, and you can ask your supervisor if you have any questions about that. Maybe have some other dates just jotted down and nearby where you can review if you need to, so you don't have to sort through a bunch of things or be on your computer, like we said, surfing the web, looking for your Optima online, especially obviously if that would be only if you were virtual. But write down some important dates of hearings. Maybe if a parent has missed so many parental visitations, how many and on what dates? Because they're going to be asking for specifics, because this is evidence. It's not just about 2 months ago, they didn't show up for 3 visits. No, on January 25th, they didn't show up. On February the 11th, they didn't show up, those sorts of things. So some of those things, most of the time, if you're going to be subpoenaed to be a witness, the attorney that asks you, that's going to be calling you, is going to kind of give you an idea about what they're going to be asking you to testify about. But if not, just review all your notes, review the dockets, review when things happened, have an awareness of some of those important dates. And if you have specifics, then you'll have some more of those specifics to what's going to pertain to that exact testimony. Okay. Again, we've talked about this again. We're always addressing the court. However, if you're in person, it's going to be a little awkward to start every time someone asks you a question here and you turn your head to address the judge. So when you're testifying, you're going to be addressing the person who asks the questions. Again, if it's virtually, it's going to be the same as if you're addressing the court, because you're going to be looking right into your camera to share your remarks. If the judge asks a question, answer respectfully, always with a yes, Your Honor. I don't know, Your Honor. I always try to say Judge, Your Honor, anytime that I address the court, just so that it's very clear who I'm speaking to and that I'm giving her the respect that she deserves. And if it's a he in the court where you serve, then that he deserves. Always, always tell the truth. Again, these are formal hearings. Every hearing is on the record, but these are formal hearings that can be reviewed, that people can go back to, pick apart every word that you said. I know that's probably making you nervous as I'm saying that, but I just want to always tell you, sometimes volunteers will come and say, well, what if somebody asks this? You have to answer honestly. You've taken an oath that you will tell the truth to the best of your knowledge, and you have sworn that before the court and all parties. So always tell the truth. Answer honestly. Even if it's something that's going to give a perception that you approve of something that you don't approve of, or, you have to answer the question honestly. It may be that you wish that nobody knew that the grandparent who you love so dearly and is the custodian of this child broke a court order by allowing their child to spend the night on Christmas Eve, because they just couldn't bear to say no, even though the court order was that the mom was never to spend the night. If they ask you, did grandmother allow mother to spend the night? And you know for a fact that she did, you have to answer honestly. You cannot cover up for someone. You do not want to have a case against you because you perjured yourself on the stand. So I hope I'm getting my point across. Do you think I'm making my point? Always tell the truth. Something that I often have done, and I have shared with other volunteers, and I have to tell you, for those of you who are newer, we had a brand new CASA, had just come through the very first official guided learning class. She was assigned really near the end of the case. And so we were already to the formal hearings. I think she had been a CASA for less than 2 months. And we found out that we were having this formal hearing and that she was likely to testify. She hadn't been subpoenaed. We didn't have a heads up. We had been on the court hearing for about 2.5 hours, and they said, we need to take a break. And we had gotten very good indications that she was going to be called to testify. Now you can imagine if you've been doing this for less than 2 months and you're in this heated, long hearing and you find out that you're going to have to testify, you might be a little nervous. So we had a phone call between, and I just said to her, take a deep breath before you answer any question. I don't care if they ask you the shortest questions and it's every few minutes. They say, what is your name? Liz Hanson. Take a deep breath. That deep breath is going to help to clear out some of that anxiety. It's going to, if you're very emotional and they've asked you a pointed question that they're trying to kind of get you riled up with, that taking that deep breath, it takes the power away from the person asking the question and brings that power back to you. So take that deep breath before you answer any question. I guarantee you it sounds kind of silly and it seems like, oh, there's going to be a lot of silence. It doesn't matter. Let the silence sit there. Take that breath. You will be glad you did. Answer as succinctly as possible and only answer the question that's asked. I don't know about you all, but I know for me, in the past, if I'm nervous and someone asks me a question, maybe it's a family member, it's something you don't want to answer, or you're not supposed to tell anybody something or whatever, I will have a tendency to ramble. And you'll tell more than you really need to tell. Believe me, the attorneys are well trained on how to ask witnesses questions. And so perhaps the prosecuting attorney, which is most likely the person who's going to call you to testify, is going to ask, and they're going to be very respectful and kind, and they're going to give you plenty of time, and they're going to say, take your time in answering these questions. That attorney that is representing the parent, they want to get you to trip up, or they want to make you nervous, or they want to make you mad so that they can show that you have bias toward their client. So taking that breath and answering only the question that was asked, I was so proud. Is it okay, Stephanie, if I say who it was? I think it is, because she did a beautiful job. So Casey Clanahan had been on this case such a short time. We talked over the phone. I gave her some of these tips. They called her, and every time she would, Casey Clanahan, and they would ask a question and she would say, no. And that parent attorney would just sit there. I think they were flabbergasted, like, usually people ramble at this point. She let the silence sit there. It threw them off their game. So they lost their momentum. So they asked another question. It just helps you maintain control. And it helps you to only answer what's being asked, because some information they'll ask in a way, hoping that you're going to give them more information that they can cause you to maybe to flip the perception of what you actually mean by what you say. So answer only what's asked. And if you're not sure what's asked, or maybe you feel like they're trying to lead you down that path, simply ask for clarification or ask them to ask the question again. Casey did that. She took my tips, and I'm not saying that I am the be all, know all of any of this, but the tips that I shared with her, she said, I'm sorry, could you please ask that question again? And in one case, she said, I'm not certain I understand. Could you possibly rephrase your question? The attorney kind of, because they knew exactly what they were trying to do, which was to trip her up or to intimidate and she was able to stop that right away. And we got the outcome that we had hoped for. She was completely honest. She, took deep breaths, answered only what was asked for clarification, or kind of stopped the momentum by saying, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're asking me. So don't be afraid to ask for clarification, ask a question. And this is the hardest part. If you're called to testify, I've done this every time, and they will object, and you will probably do this as well. But you need to remember, you cannot testify to anything that someone told you, including the child. Seems so unfair. I agree. It's unfair. We're the child's advocate. We're the child's voice in our court, because we don't bring children into the court proceedings until it's maybe adoption or a permanent custody, or if the judge needs to speak with them privately. It's not fair, but it's the rule of the law. We cannot testify to anything that someone told us. Only what you saw firsthand or learned from a document or through your observation, or that you learned from someone who was present in the court at that time that they could question, and they still may object to that. I'm not going to say that I told you to do this, but of course, I guess we're being recorded. So one thing you could do, instead of saying, well, the child told me, there's going to immediately be an objection. You could say something to the effect of, well, at the parental visits, the child was, this is not a good example, but the child was smacked on the bottom, during the visit. So he told me, so don't start your sentence with the child told me, but try to say what you want to say and then say, so the child told me. It's still going to get objected to, but everybody hears it. And so then that might help the prosecuting attorney who wants to ask you a question to find a way to ask it so that you can answer that question. So you didn't hear it from me, but that might just be helpful to you at some point. Again, anytime you're testifying, look straight into your camera, if you're testifying virtually. Do not argue. Keep those emotions in check. Take those deep breaths. And one really important thing to remember too, and this is in person or virtual, you may be best buddies with one of the attorneys that's in DNA court. You know, you've been in court with them in person, or your Facebook friends and all of this. They've been a GAL on your previous case and you worked really closely with them. Now you're on a case and they represent the parent. And all of a sudden, they're saying ugly things about you and they're asking you questions as if you're this horrible person. And you're thinking, wait, I thought we were just great friends. Don't take it personally. They are doing the best job they can for their client. They don't mean it to be against you. It's just their skills and their tactics that they've learned to try to ruffle someone who's testifying against their client. So it's hard to not take that personally, but please just slough it off afterwards. Talk to your supervisor if you need to and say, oh, that was awful. I can't believe they treated me like this. I promise you the next time you have a case with them where they're someone who agrees with you in your case, or you see them in person, or you comment on Facebook, they're going to be your best bud again. It is nothing personal, but they have to do the best job they can to work on behalf of their client. So hopefully that will help you. Let me see if there's anything else. You know, we just don't want to come across with any extra emotion. You want to appear as unbiased as possible, even if in the back of your mind, you really feel like you probably do have a bias. You're going to have a stance. In a formal hearing, you're going to believe that a child should either be with a parent, or should be with a relative, or should be with a foster family. But try to answer as succinctly and honestly and as unbiased as possible. I think that is pretty much all that I have. Just don't allow people to get under your skin. Prepare, talk to your supervisor, debrief with your supervisor after you have to speak up or testify. And just remember, none of it's personal. I guarantee you, even if the judge rules in a way that's against what your recommendation was, in her heart, she would probably like to rule with you. But due to the law that she has taken an oath to uphold, she has to go by the laws of evidence and has to make the judgment that she needs to make from what she's heard. So anything from anyone that they would like to add, or any questions you have? Anyone? I just want to thank you all again for joining us for this training today. You can always send me, Stephanie, Jen, Dave, any questions or comments that you might have after the fact, because you're a processor and you need to think through some things. I do want to make you aware you're going to receive 2 CEUs for attending this live today. If you've been on with us since the beginning, and hopefully you all were able to sign into the chat bar as our sign-in sheet. We will be offering the recording of this to anybody who would like to watch that. So those folks who will watch it need to send something to me and email me their takeaways, and they will receive 1.5 CEUs. We are trying to offer an incentive to those of you who set aside time to engage and participate in these live trainings. So I hope this has been helpful to you today, and I'm just so grateful. Stephanie, Jen, do you all have any closing comments besides a reminder to wear blue tomorrow and take a selfie and send it to us? Anything that anybody would like to add before we end our time together today? If not, I am grateful for you all, and you are free to sign off. And thanks again for all you do for the children that we serve. We appreciate you more than we could possibly say. You guys have a great rest of the day. Thank you, Gary. Good to see you guys.
Great job, Liz.
Thanks, you guys. Jen and Savannah, I'll text you in a minute, Jen, because we'll see if we're going to meet up.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you all. It's good to have you on here, Donna and Susan. Thanks for joining us today.